Welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we are going to be looking at DAX in Power BI. Now if you are learning Power BI and you keep hearing about DAX but don't really understand what it does, this video is exactly for you. Today I'll be walking you through DAX step by step, from what it means to how to use it to build smarter calculations and cleaner dashboards. We'll start simple, learn together, and by the end you have a clear understanding of how DAX transforms your data into insights. So if you are ready, take a deep breath, open Power BI, and let's get started. Okay, so now what is DAX, right? What is DAX in Power BI? Now, DAX simply stands for Data Analysis Expressions, all right? And it's a formula that Power BI uses to create custom calculations like measures and calculated columns, all right? And all this happens in Power BI. I have a disclaimer here, say note. In Power BI, measures and columns are used for different purposes. Calculated columns perform rule-level calculations stored in the data model, while measures are dynamic calculations performed at query time. And so what I'm trying to say is that in using DAX, there are two main things that we will have to keep in mind. One is the fact that we might probably be using what we call calculated columns, right? And then the second one is that we might be using measures. All right, so I need to understand as and when we are going to be able to use calculated columns, and as and when we should use what we call measures. All right, not understanding this is going to really affect how you perform your DAX functions, and so it's important that you understand that we have something called calculated columns and we have something called measures, and they both serve different purposes. All right, I hope that is understood. Okay, good. So if that is fine, let's move on to today's discussion. Let's get ready. And so, yeah, so this is our Power BI and this is the sheet that we'll be working with, right? So let me show you. So this is it, all right? So we've already done the data cleaning and all of that, but this one doesn't have the data cleaning. You can find the data cleaning in one of my videos, all right? Where I have the data cleaning using Power Query and Power BI, part one, and I also have a part two of it. So yeah, we are not going through the data cleaning. We are just jumping right using DAX. All right. And so this is our data set. And like I said, today we are going to be focusing solely on the sum, count, average, and all of that. Sum X and count X. Okay. So what is the sum? Just like in Excel. All right. Sum is simply the summation of a particular column, or if you want to sum up a particular row, you want to add the items in a row to derive a particular result. All right. Or probably you just want to sum up a particular column. So this salary, let's say we want to find the total of all of these items. All right. Just all of these items. So we can use what we call the sum. All right. And then we also want to find probably the total of all of this column. You can again use what we call the sum. That's if you want to find the total. Okay. So we have sum, we have average, we have the count, we have mean, we have max, and so if I want to find the highest salary over here, I'll use what I call the max. All right. If I want to find the lowest salary, I'll use what we call the mean. All right. If I want to find the average of all of these items, I'll use what I call the average. If I want to find the total rows, okay, how many transactions we have, I can use what we call the count. Or we also have one that we call the distinct count. All right. And so let's have this in mind. Now let's look at this. So it says calculate performed at query time. So let's understand one thing. The calculated columns perform rule level calculations stored in the data model, while measures are dynamic calculations. All right. So what this is simply trying to say is that with calculated columns, we need to create a new column. Do you understand? And then put in our items. Okay. So we need to create a new column for what we want. All right. And calculated columns normally they take up memory. They take up some of the space or the memory, and so you only use it if it's necessary. If you necessarily have to. All right. Then you use what we call calculated columns. Now, what all this, forget the big words, but calculated column is simply where we right click and then we choose new column. All right, so it's going to give us a new column. Okay, and let's say we want to find, so this salary, this is bonus, so now we want to find the total salary, and so we start the column and then we can say, okay, so total column, and then we can put our function here as sum. So we are still talking about sum of the salary column. All right, the salary column, and you can say multiply by the sum of bonus. All right, and then we enter. Oh, excuse me. Now, so calculated column. Excuse me, sorry about that. So here we can have the salary, all right, and then multiply by the bonus. Sorry about that, right? And then we can have, so these items in the column. Okay, and so this is what we call the calculated column. All right, so if you remember in one of my videos where we had to find the age bracket, we use what we call the calculated column, and then we use the if function. Okay, and we said that, so if the age is between this and this, then this, else this. It's in one of my videos. All right, and so this is what calculated column is all about. This is where you start a new column and then you put in your DAX function. Don't worry with the DAX, just chill. And so we start a new column and then we put in our DAX function. All right. However, with measures a little different. So let's assume that we want to find the total salary. Okay, we want to find the total salary, and we don't want a calculated column. So the measure helps us to just find the total salary straight ahead, all right, without starting a new column or anything. So we right click and then we go to new measure, all right, and then once we go to new measure, it also pops up here. We are going to say, all right, so total salary, and then now we can use our sum this salary, all right, and so once we start typing it, Power BI is going to come up with what you want, and then you are going to close the bracket and go to hit enter, and now you realize that it's showing here as total salary. So now this becomes the total salary, right? So this is our total salary, okay? And then here now we have, and then we have this, right? That's our total salary. So that's the difference between the calculated columns and then the measures. When you're using it in your activities, the calculated columns will create a column and it will save that column in your data set. Whereas with measures, you don't necessarily need to create a column. You only need to put in the function, the DAX function, exactly. And then you are going to get your answer. So that doesn't take any memory, doesn't take any memory space or whatever that you call it. All right. I hope this understood. If you have any questions, kindly leave it in the comment section below, and I'll look at it. If I need to make a whole video on that, I will do that. All right. So now, we are starting off with the sum function. And just as I said, these aggregate functions I use to sum up, or I use on things that are numerical. So you can use sum, average, things like first name, geography, and department. It wouldn't work, right? You use it on things that you can actually aggregate. So some function is used on items or columns that gives you the opportunity to aggregate, all right? And so you can sum the age, you can sum bonus, and one thing that you can use to sum to know whether you have the opportunity to sum or not, you realize that it has a zigzag signs. So this tells you that, oh, this particular column you can actually sum them up. All right, it tells you that you can sum them up. but these ones don't have them. So these ones are text, so you can't sum text, just like we did the other time in one of our videos. You can't sum text, all right? And so if you want to be able to sum the text, then you probably need to look at the data type or something. And so sometimes you realize that salary is in text, and that is why it's important to do your data cleaning properly, so that you can change all the text to numerical. Because if your salary is in text, even when you come here, it wouldn't give you the opportunity to sum it up or to average it, all right? And so the sum function, the average function, in fact, the whole aggregate function over here will help you, or is used to make aggregations, all right, based on that column that you are working with. And so let's start off by seeing how this works. So we did one example with the salary, and we are doing it again. So you go to your table name, you click on new measures, all right. And once you click on new measures, you are going to get this box, right? This is the section that helps you to write your DAX functions, okay? So it helps you to write your DAX functions. All right, so let's respond now. It helps you to, and this particular thing that we have here is the title of your DAX function. So assume you want to find the average of your salary, you want to find the total salary, you want to find the minimum salary or the maximum salary. You just write the heading here, all right? So assume you want to find the maximum salary, all right? So what we can do is click on max, or we say maximum salary, all right? And the function to use is maximum, the highest. So we use what we call max, all right? So once you click on max, it's going to come, you click on it, and then what you do is that you start typing what you want. So salary, we are looking at salary. If you want to look at age, you start typing age, so the max age, and then you are going to see age with the name of your data set. So the data set is saved as sheet 1, and so keep that in mind. Don't just choose any age or anything, but choose the one that is in your sheet. All right, so this is sheet 1. You can have yours as data analytics tutorial sheet, whatever, however you saved it. All right, so sheet 1, age, this is what I'm looking for. And then you can see it's showing us over. It says max the column name or the scalar 1. So the column name is what we are choosing, which is the age. So we click on age, so sheet age, and then we close the bracket, right? And then once you close the bracket, you click on enter, and then it's going to show you. So this is the maximum. Let me take this up a little bit. All right, so maximum salary, this is what we just created. And so when we click on this, it comes. So we can use what we call the card to show. So the maximum salary, that is the highest salary, is what is 64. And then if we come here to the age column, you realize that indeed the highest age is 64. All right, so that's with the age. Now let's look at min. So assuming, all right, we don't want the maximum, we want the minimum. All right, so likewise, what we are going to do is we are going to say minimum salary, and then we are going to, or minimum age, excuse me. So minimum age, we are going to say min, we are going to say age. All right, we are going to say age. We are going to close this bracket. We are going to hit an enter. All right, and it's going to change it. So it's going to show us the minimum age. When we come here, we look, realize that the minimum age is actually 10. Right? Okay, so that is that for the min and max. So now let's say we want to look at average, the average of the ages. All right, so again we can click on this. We say average age, average age. All right, so average age, also we have what we call average. So you just click on average, so they are similar, and then you say age. All right, so this is how you use the aggregate functions. So you enter, and it's going to show you the average age to be 30. All right, now let's say we want to look at our total bonus. All right, so we have bonus, and now you see there's this exact sign. It means we can actually perform aggregation on this. So we can't perform aggregation on this because it doesn't have the zigzag, but we can do that for this. All right, so let's say we want to find the total bonus, or our total bonus. All right, so we say total bonus will be equal to sum, because we are summing up the bonus column. Do you understand? Summing up the bonus column. So it's going to be sum of the bonus, all right, to get our total bonus, all right. So you are going to say sum. We are going to again start typing our bonus, and it's going to show bonus. So if the column is not in the sheet, it's not going to show unless the column is actually in the sheet. Do you understand? All right, and then we click on enter, and that's going to show us that the sum of the bonus, the sum of all of this, all right, is actually what? It's actually 16,000, so 16k. All right, so that is it for the aggregate functions, the basic aggregate function, that is sum, average, mean and max. Then there's another one that we call the count distinct, and then counter. All right, so let's start with the count. So with a count, what I use the count for personally is to count the number of rows. So this row, so this is my row. So this from 1 to 20, this is the number of rows. All right, the number of rows. So sometimes you can have the number of rows exceeding 20. I'm going into the hundreds and the thousands, and you're not sure. So you want to know how many rows you are working with. All right, and so the count will help you to do that. So you can say, all right, I want to count the number of rows. All right, and normally with the count, you use a count with unique a column with unique values. All right, there should be a particular column with unique values. All right, so ID or something, something unique that you can actually count. All right, and so I use a count, and I say, okay, I'm counting for the ID column. All right, counting the ID. I want to know the total rows. All right, and so I click on enter, and it's going to show 20 exactly. So this is what we have from 1 to 20. So the ID is showing that we have 1 to 20, and so assuming you're having 1 to 1,000, it's going to show that, okay, our count rows. So you can say count rows. All right, count rows, and that will be our count rows is 20, and it's going to, so what about this one that you make is going to be shown here. So once we are done with count, maybe so I'm done with count, I want to move on to my next, this one. So what I can simply do is come back to sheet, click on this, go to measures. All right, and then it will start a new one. Okay, and then so let's say I want to count distinct items. I want to count the distinct items in here. All right, so this first name and last name column, so they are, I want to count the distinct names that are in here, so no repetitions. All right, just distinct these ones. All right, distinct names. And so what I can do is that I will put this on measure, and we'll say, okay, distinct names, so number of names, distinct name. So how many distinct names do we have there? And I'm going to say distinct count, and I'm going to say first name, and then once I click on that, so select it, and then it's going to show me that we have 20 distinct names. All right, so 20 distinct names, so that's what we have. All right, okay, now let's move on to sum x, count x, and average x, and how they function or how they work. All right, and so what the sum x or the average x does is that it's not going to, so like so where we have the total column, you have to put the total column to find the sum of this and this to be this. And so now let's check for the total column. Yeah, so let's check for the total column. So this particular column, let's say we want to find the total amount that was found in there. All right, and so we are going to use what we call the sum again, because we are just summing that total column. Okay, so sum total column, all right, we are going to say now the sum of total column. So this like so. And then we are going to have the sum of total column. Okay, so we select this, and I'm going to use a card to show us the total. So this is the total, right? All right. So this is the sum of total column. But there are instances whereby you don't want to save or you don't want to create this. All right. You just want to know the sum of these columns and then this column. All right. You want to know the product of this column and this column. All right. Then just leave it at that without creating a new column for it. All right. And so what we can use is we can use what we call the sum x. And so and that is why we have the sum x. So this sum x. So it sums two columns without you necessarily having to start a new column or create a calculated column. All right, do you understand? All right, and so how do we do this? So again, we come here and we say new measure. So we don't use a calculated column. Now we use a measure because we are using the sum x. All right, and so we are going to say total column. But this we are saying total column 2. All right, and we are using what we call the sum x to see if we can get the same result. All right, and so we're going to type sum x, and then how do we get the total column? We got it from multiplying the total salary by the bonus. All right, by total salary or salary by the bonus. So that's how we derive this particular figure, the sum total. All right, so again I'm going to say salary. Oh, sorry. It's asking for table name. So you are going to say sheet. All right. So sheet. So that is our table name over here. So sheet. Right. And now what is the expression? Now the expression is salary, which is this salary multiplied by our bonus. Our bonus. And now we can close the bracket like so and hit an enter. All right. So this is total column 2. Now let's see how much we have. Come again. And so you can see that this is showing the same amount as what we had for using the calculated column. All right. And so the sum x, the average x, the count x, all right, the min x, those things you use them when you don't want to create a calculated column like so. So you don't want to create a calculated column for it. You just want to multiply and then get the totals, and then you move on without taking a lot of space or going through the trouble of creating a calculated column. All right. Now the date function simply helps us to if you want to record a date. All right. So date, you want to put in a date. Now we can use the measures and we can use calculated column. So let's see how it works with the measures. All right. So let's say we have this, and so we go to new measure, Excel, and I want to look at date. All right, so we are talking about date. So date. So how does the date function work? So this is how it works. So you just type the date, you select. By now I'm sure we all know how to use this the area for the code. So date, and then the logical statements or the statement, the write-up shows that we should put in our year, the month, and then the day. And so that's what we are going to do. So we say year 2025, comma, and then what is the month? The month, let's say March, and then day we say 20th. All right, and then we enter. Oh, this is date already. So let's just change the title column to date 1. All right, and then now we enter. So we have it. So let's see how it works. So date, and then let's put it in a card. All right. So date. So this is how it works. So now you have the date, right? So date 1, and this is the date. All right. But how can we really use this? I mean, in the work setting or in a way that makes it look, like we've actually learned something. So let's jump right in. let's come here. And then a lot of this we are going to be using the calculated columns, which is why it's very important that you watch my part one of this video to understand what calculated columns are. And so we use a new column. I'm taking this date out, but I'll take it out afterwards. And then let's repeat the same thing. And we say date. This time let's make it 2. Okay. So we say date. And we say year 2025 again. We say the March is 3rd. And then we say the day, which should be 20th. Now let's hit on enter. And you see right here that it has populated this column, this data column, with that information, the information that we've just written, that is this date. So just populated it. So when we use calculated column, that is where we actually see the benefit of this date function. All right. And so once we have this, we can go ahead and then format it, make it So let me say this. Shit. All right. So that is fine. And so this is how the date function works. All right. So the date function works like this. So if you need a date, you can, maybe if you have a column or you have a transaction and you need one date throughout, you can just start a calculated column and then you use the date function to populate that column with that exact date. All right. Okay. So now the second thing that we'll be looking at after the date, we'll be looking at what we call date diff. All right. So date diff is simply date difference. Yeah, date diff is simply date difference. So the difference between two dates, don't get complicated. So the difference between two dates, we use what we call the date diff. That's the function that we use. All right. And so we say, let's say this is date 1 and this is date 2. And so we need to know the difference between this date and this date. How long did it take from this date to this date? All right, that is all what this is about. Okay, now how can we use it? So now we can use this in a setting whereby let's say so as a company you supply goods to debtors, or you supply goods, or a supplier of goods. When you give them out, you put in the date, and then at the time that the people make payment, you put in that date also. And so now you want to, after getting the data set for you, now you want to find out how long does it really take for people to pay me back after they come for my goods or something. Do you understand? And that is when you can use the date diff, all right, to find the number of days, number of hours, minutes, whatever that it takes for the people to do to make payment for the goods. All right, so that is a typical scenario where you have to use the date diff. There are so many other scenarios, but this is just a typical scenario where you have to use the date diff. All right, and so how does that work? So let's create another calculated column. And a lot of today's function, like I said, they are mainly used within the calculated column and not with the measure. All right, so let's kind of keep that in mind. So we say date diff, and there's a function date diff, and it's going to show. So it says date 1, date 2, and then the interval. So date 1 is when you are starting, date 2 is when the period ends, and then the interval. So the interval could be in days, hours, minutes, etc. You'll see that when we get there. As I said, date 1. So let's say date 1 is this date. All right. And so I say date. Excuse me. I say date. I don't want to use this one. So I say the date on the salaries. So salaries date. All right. And so salaries, and then this is the date I'm looking for, which is this one. All right. And I'm going to say comma, and then date 2, and date 2 is going to be this date 2. So I can type date 2. Salaries date 2. You can type date 2, and then once you are done, you put in the comma, and then to ask you for the interval. So you don't want the answer in days, you want it in hours, in minutes, in months, in kata, in seconds, week, year, however you want it. All right, so let's say I want it in years. So when I click on years, now I close the bracket, and it's going to give me. So the difference between this date and this date is 20 years. So it took 20 years for us to arrive at this year. All right, and that's how it goes on. All right, that's how it follows. We can change this. If you don't want the year, we can use day, and it's going to show how many days it took. All right, we can use the month. All right, we can use month. It's going to show how many months that took. All right, and so on and so forth. So that's how the date diff function works. All right, so let's move on to the next one. I'm trying to make this as quick as I can, which is date value. Now, date value is something that I've always loved. It's something that I've always loved to use. Okay, because like I said in one of my videos, I didn't mention that the date column in any data set can be at a point in time be very messy, extremely messy. And we did we did there's one video that I showed an example. All right, however, there are instances where it could be even messier, like this one. So take a look at this date. All right, so this is broken down into three. We have the day, we have the month, we have the year. Okay, and you want to put them together. All right, you want to bring them together so that you can have one column as date. Now the problem is that this is categorized as numbers, this is categorized as text, and this is categorized as numbers. If you try putting them together, it's going to give you an error. All right, because this is, you are trying to bring text and then numbers, whole numbers together, and so it's going to give you an error. And so what the date value does is that it helps you to concatenate all of these columns so that you are able to get date for your data set. Okay, so what do I mean? So the date value, let's say that you just want to try your hands on it. You want to use the day. No, I don't even want to confuse. No. So that I don't confuse. When it happens like this, let's just have it in mind that if your data have separated columns and it happen to be in numbers and text, we use a date value. All right, I don't want to digress. And so let's look at the function for the date value. So this is date value, and then it's asking for the date text. All right, it's asking for the date text. And so the first one is the day. Now, because we are bringing all of these together, like in merging columns, as we did with the Power Query. Okay, you remember with Power Query, we merged columns together so that we could have one column. So that is in fact what we are also doing here. We are trying to merge these columns together to get one particular column. Okay, and that column, we want it to be in the date format. We don't want it to be in numbers, in text. No, we want it in date format. And so if you want to merge them in date format, that is what we are using the date value. I hope this is clearly understood. And so it's the day. Now, normally this is how our date is supposed to look like. There's an example. So excuse me, so this is the date. This is how date is supposed to look like, where we have the day, and then we have the slash, and then we have the month, and we have the slash, and then we have the year. All right, so this is how it's supposed to be. And so when you are using the date value in Power BI, remember that you need to add a slash, and adding the slash, you need to add the end. So it's day and slash and month and slash then the year. That's how it works. And so it's going to be day ampersand this. All right, and then we have and then we say and month. So month from here. All right, and then again we go and with the ampersand, and then we go with the slash. All right, and then another percent, and then we add the year. from the sheet. And then now we can close bracket, and voila, this is going to give us, all right, so this is in date format. You don't need to format it anymore because the date value formats it into a date format for you. All right, and so once you get it here, you can just format it a little bit and take the time out of it so that we just have the date. All right, so now this is 1st January 2025, 1st January 2025 as date format. I hope that is understood. All right, okay, so let me bring this here so that you can see. So you see that it's automatically in date time format. All right, so it's in date time format. So that's what the date value does. So it helps you to, merge date columns as date, without having to face the problem with errors with the date columns, because the date columns could be very cumbersome. That is why I'm taking my time to explain this very well. And the other one, in my previous video as well, I explained the date column. If you realize, I spent a lot of time talking about the date because it could get very, very, very messy. All right, so we are done with date value, and let's see, the next one that we want to talk about is what we call the e-date. Now the e-date simply helps us to, so let's say this is January, February. So e-date will help you to, so this is January 1, the next value over here will be in February, or could be in the following December, or could be 12 months from this date, or could be 10 months from this date. So if you want a column that is about 10 months from this particular date, let me use this particular date, or 1 month from this particular date, or previous month from this particular date, what we use is what we call the e-date. All right, so how does the e-date works? Again, we are using column, so don't forget. So the e-date, like I said, e-date helps you to add or subtract month from the month that you are starting on. All right, and so this is 1st January 2025, and so assuming I need a column that is 12 months from this particular column. All right, I need a column that is 12 months from these particular columns. What we are going to use is what we call the e-date. And so how does it work? So we say e-date, and then it says start date. So when is the start date? This is the start date. And so we are going to say the date value is the start date, and now it's asking for the month. So how many months interval are we going to say, or do we want from this start date? And so we can say 12 months from this start date, and then close. And what's going to happen? So let me format this. Make it some way. Good. So this is 1st January 2025, and you see when we use the e-date, it's showing 1st January 2026. So that is 12 months interval from our start date, which is 1st January 2025. Now we come here, it's showing that 3rd February 2025, and this is 3rd February 2026. So another 12 months from our start date. Now, in a more ideal situation, it could be maybe just 1 month from our start date. So you can just use 1 month. And check it out. So 1 month from this date, our start date, is what? It's 1st February 2025. You understand? And so that is what the e-date does. So the e-date gives you the month, a month from your start month based on the number of months that you want it to be. All right. Likewise, we can say that, okay, we want to go back. We want to see the previous month. In such situations or scenarios, all you have to do is to minus 1. And so 1st January minus 1 month, that's going to give you December 2024. So this is how e-date works, and this is how you can use e-date. All right, I hope you understand and you are following and enjoying it. All right, so now let's look at the month, year, and day. All right, month, year, and day. So we start off with month, and this is simple. all you have to do is say you are looking for the month from which date. Let's say this e date column, so you are looking for only the month in this e date column. All right, so you say this is test sheet. I'm looking for month. I can't see the e date, so let's use date value. So you are picking the month from this particular one. All right, so there we close. So you are picking the month from this particular column. Just the month. We only want the month. Oh, the name month is already used, so let's use month 1. All right, so we only have the month. All right, so we only have the month from this, and the month from this particular column is January. All right, so January is a month. So now when we come here, February is a month. When we come here, March is a month. All right, so that's how you use month. We can also equally say, all right, so we have the month. Now let's do year, and then equally we can just type year and then put our in the year that the column that we are looking for the year from, and then click on enter, and it's going to show us 2025. That is the year. So the months, and that's exactly how the day also works. So this is the day, and so if you are to choose day, all right, if you are to choose day, it's going to show you that this is the day, the one, January 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is the day, right? So this is basically how the month, the day, and the year works, right? So you just put in your day, your month, whatever, and then it's going to, do the work. Now and today. So when do we use now and today? So we use now and today when you want to find the exact. We use now when you want to find the exact date and then the exact time. All right, so assuming I'm selling some goods to someone and I want to just quickly put in that this day for about 20 rows. I'm going to say this day without typing the date and going through all of that, merging and typing day, month, and year altogether. We can just use now, and then now will even show the date, not just the date, but then also the time. So an example is this. Look down here below. So the time I'm recording this transaction, right, or I'm doing this particular work is 4:36. This is when I'm about to talk about now. So the time is 4:36, and the date is 09 August 2025. All right. So what the now does. So when we click on now, when we type now, excuse me, and then we say now is a function, and then you don't need to put anything in the bracket. You just need to type your now, open bracket, close bracket, that's it, and then you enter. And what's it going to do? Now it's going to work it out for you. And so you realize that you come to your now and it's showing the date and it's showing the exact time. It's not just showing the date, but it's also showing the exact time. So the time for this work is 4:36, 4:36, yes, PM. All right, even added the seconds. All right. So that's how the now works. All right. Now another function that works similarly to the now is what we call today. So today will actually bring out today's date, but it's not going to bring out the time. It's just going to show you the date, not the time. If you want the time, we use what we call the now. That will show you the date and then the time. If you just want the date, we use today. We don't use the now. All right. And likewise with the today also, you type your today, you pick the function, you open bracket, you close bracket, you enter, and it's going to show you today. All right, so this is today. So 9/8 2025, and then what are we going to do? So this time is wrong, so we can easily format it by going here and then changing it to this. All right, formatting it a little bit, and it's going to show just the date. All right, good. So once we are done with this, let's move on to the next one, which is weekday. Now weekday works just like the month and then the and so we say weekday, it works just like the month, the year, and the day, just as we did. There's just a catch though. So when we say date value, so this referring to this particular column, all right, and then we say column. And then with the weekday, you need to know, or you need to choose, select. So you see we have 1, we have 2, and we have 3. Now all this is saying is that when you pick 1, it means that your weekday starts from Sunday and ends on Saturday. So if your weekday is starting from Sunday and ending on Saturday, that means Sunday is going to be 1 and then Saturday is going to be 7. Now this differs because some people believe that Monday is 1 and then Sunday is 7, and that is why you have these options. So you can select. So 1 is Sunday being 1 and then Saturday being 7. Now 2 is Monday being 1 and then Sunday being 7. So you can just select whichever one works for you, right? And now you close the bracket, then you hit enter, and it's going to show. So this 4 is showing that. So you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So the weekday for this is actually Wednesday. All right, the weekday for this is actually Wednesday. Now let's see if this is true. And to find out if it's true, we are going to use my personal favorite and what I call format. So I use format in combination with date columns almost a lot of the time, and in almost all of my projects and all of my work. I use format in collaboration with the date column. And so let's see, how are we going to use a format in collaboration with this date column? Now let's start off with the week. So format week, the weekday, weekday. And so I'm going to say, you know what, format, because I want to find out if indeed 4 over here, if in the days 1 over here for the weekday is actually Sunday, and then this 4 is actually Tuesday or Wednesday. So that's what I want to find out from you, because someone can look at this and still wouldn't understand. But if you have the days of the week spelled out for them, they understand, and that is where the format comes in. All right, that is where you use a format, and it's so beautiful. And so we say format, and then we say date value, referring to this particular column again, and then I'm going to hit on comma, and then I'm going to say, because I need a weekday, I'm going to say, you know what, D, and then we close it, and then I hit on enter. And exactly, it's showing us that indeed 1 is Sunday, this is Wednesday, Saturday, Friday. So this spells it out clean for you. So anyone who picks this data knows that, oh, okay, so this 4 is actually this is actually this, and it makes the whole thing easy and really clean. All right, now when it comes to this, so when you choose 1, 2, 3, when you make the D, the initials 4, it's going to spell everything out fully. But then in instances where you just make it 3, it's going to shorten the spellings, or it's going to shorten them to this format. All right, don't make it 1, don't make it 2, at least make it 3 or 4. All right, that's beautiful. We can do the same for the month as well. So there are instances whereby the month is not in January, it's just 1/1/2025, and so in such scenarios you can also just use format and then use M, and again it's going to spell it out beautifully for you right over here. Okay, and then when you make it 3 as well, it's going to shorten it. So that's how to use a format, and then the date function, my personal favorite, something I really like to use, you know. And so we are done with our date and time function. So now let's talk about the calendar. All right, so I talked about all this, but I need to talk about the calendar. Now I'm just going to go straight to the point and show you how to use a calendar in a real life setting. All right, in a real life setting, I'm not going to go about or beat around the bush, no, but in a real life setting, how do you use a calendar or the calendar table? So now what I normally do when I get a data set, so for example, this data set has dates in them, but then again, is advisable to create your own calendar table and then use your own calendar table, the dates in the calendar table, to do your visualizations and your analysis. And when we get to visualizing and all that, we'll probably go through a few reasons why for you to understand. Okay, and so normally when I get my data set like this and there's date in them, I use the calendar. All right, and now what the calendar does is that, so assuming this is the date, so it's going to pick every single detail. All right, and so I use a calendar with min or max. so that I say that, you know what, calendar, the minimum should be this, the minimum date in this date column, and then the maximum date in this date column. And so you are going to find records of the minimum date through to the maximum date that I've given it. Now, let me show you an example. So this particular date begins with begins on the Wednesday, 24th August 2025, ends on 15th September 2024. All right, see how short this is. However, if I'm using the calendar, I'll click on this, go to new table. You are creating a new table as your dim table or as your calendar table. And so you just click on this, you have these options, you go to your new you go to a new table. All right, and then when you go to the new table, you call this new table. Some people will just type dim table. I prefer to call it calendar table, so not to confuse myself. So calendar table. So this tells me that this is a table that I prepared for my date. All right, calendar table. And so what I do is I go with calendar. I say calendar. All right, calendar. Now I use min with calendar, so that I say that, okay, so calendar, the minimum date should be the date that I have in my data set. All right, so as a calendar, the minimum date should be the date that I have, not any random date, but the date that I have in my data set. And so that is why I use a minimum. So the minimum date in my data set, and then I say what? So date. I use it. So salaries. So salaries, and I use date. So this is the minimum date. So, and then I close it. So salary, the minimum date in my data set. Then I say comma, and then asking for the end date. So what should be the end date? Should the end date be 2025, 2024, 2023? But like I said, I like to use everything in my data set. So again, I'm going to say the minimum date should be that of my date in my data set. Then the maximum should be the same thing. So date, and then now I do what? I close it, and you close it again, and then I hit on enter. So now when you look at this, there is a lot. This, you see, there are more informations to just that date, because it's taken everything from 24th August 2025 through to the last date, which is 19th April 2008. So it's taking everything, every single thing. All right, that was in my data set. So that's how I use the calendar table in a real life setting. That's how I use the calendar table. Try to use it in combination with the min and max based on the date that you have in your data set, so that your analysis is easier and proper, you know. And yeah, it works better in such situations than just use calendar or leave it like that, you know. So using the calendar, the min and the max helps you to get every single detail between the minimum date and then the maximum date. All right, and that helps you in your analysis. All right, so thank you. We are done with that. We are done with the date and time functions. If you have any questions, kindly leave it in the comment section below. I would appreciate it, and I will really take a look at it. So now let's move on to our logical functions. Let's start off with the if function. All right, so the if function, and I'm going to say, so we are going to use this particular data set. So what does the if function do? So the if function simply says that if a condition is met, then return this value. If not, return this value. All right, and so what I mean by that is that in a situation where I say that, okay, is Kofi a boy, or is Mbappe a boy? So if Mbappe is a boy, then I'm going to say yes. Else if Mbappe is not a boy, then no. And so the condition is going to be if Mbappe equal to boy, yes. Else, comma, no. So that's how it works. All right, so let's try something for an understanding. So again, we use a calculated column, and then I'm going to say, what I'm going to say is that, okay, so if this salary is greater than 50,000, 50K, then what do you do? So if the salary is greater than 50K, then we are going to say this person deserves a bonus. Else, if the salary is less than 50K, then we say this person doesn't deserve a bonus. All right. And so how do you write something like this? And that's what you are going to do. So I say new column, and I'm going to call this particular column if. All right. And so our condition was, let me quickly open this. All right. So the condition was if salary is greater than or is greater than 50,000, then he deserves a bonus. Else he or she does not deserve a bonus. Good. So this is the condition. So our manager says if the salary of any person is greater than 50,000, then we should say that he deserves a bonus. Otherwise, if he doesn't receive a salary of above 50,000, then he does not deserve a bonus. And so what we do is that we come here into our Power BI and then our function, and we say that if per what our manager wants, it says if the logical statement is what? Salary. That's the logical statement. And so if salary referring to this particular column, all right, if salary is greater than 50,000, all right, what should be the result? So result if true. And so if the salary is indeed greater than 50,000, we say what? Deserves a bonus. And it's asking result if false. That is, what if the salary is not greater than 50,000? So what do we say? We say if not, then we say does not deserve a bonus. Then we put in our quotation and then we close the bracket and we hit on enter. And it's going to populate it here and show us that if the salary, so in this particular row, we say that this salary is less than 50,000, and so it says it does not deserve a bonus per the condition that we've given it. But then this one says deserves a bonus. Why? Because he or she receives a salary above 50,000. All right, and so the condition that we gave to this, is what has populated this particular column. Right? I hope you do understand. Now, one thing to keep in mind, realize that this is in figures, and that's why we didn't put it in quotation marks or those marks. These are in text, and so we need to put them in a closing and opening quotation marks. All right, so let's keep that in mind. So if it's in figures, we leave it. If not, put them in. This is important. All right, so the next one is, let's talk about the AND OR function. Now, AND or when we say AND is simply when the AND function is simply when two conditions are met. Right? So use the AND when we want to see if two conditions are. So if the two conditions are met, then we say true. Then it says it's true. If the two conditions are not met, then it's false. However, OR is if either one of the conditions are met, that is fine. That is still true. But if both conditions are not met, then that will give you a false. What do I mean by this? So I'm going to say that if the salary is greater than 50,000 and the department is also finance, then it's going to return a value saying true, which shows that or indicates that indeed this particular salary is above 50,000 and the department is also finance. Any other thing aside this is going to give me false. And so let's jump in. It says and so the first logical statement, department equals finance. slash. So what's the comma? So what's the second logical statement? Second logical statement says that and the salary should be over 50,000. And so again we put that, we say salary is also greater than 50,000, and then we close bracket. And now it's going to populate whether indeed, yes, so it's going to populate it over here. So it's going to tell us that this particular row doesn't meet the criteria, or it doesn't meet the condition. However, when we look at this and this, it tells us that indeed this person is in the finance department and is receiving a salary of about 50,000. So this meets the criteria, and that is why it signals us to say that yes, this condition is met and this condition is true. And so this is how the end function actually works. All right, when two conditions are met, there's no, they are actually met, it will return a result of it being true. If either one of the conditions are not met, it returns a false, which is the exact opposite of the or function. All right, so let's talk about the or. So it's going to be the same thing essentially. So what the or function does is that if either one of the condition is met, it still gives you a true, irrespective of whether the second condition is met or not. As long as one condition is met, it's going to give you a true. And so in this situation, if you're using what we call the or, it's going to say that if the department is finance and the salary is even less than 50,000, it's still going to give you true, because we are using the or function, unlike the and function where the two conditions needs to be met. All right, and so with or, even if one condition is met, you still it still pass. All right, and so let's hit on enter, and we are going to see that. So initially this was false, but now it's true. Why is it true? It's true because even though the department is HR, the second condition, which is the salary, still surpasses 50,000, and so it does what? It gives you a true as an outcome, because we are saying that if one is this or that, it's still the same thing. All right, and so this is how the and the or functions are used in Power BI. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we have what we call the upper send, and we have the vertical pipe or the vertical line. Some people call it vertical line, some call it the upper send. So these two are used, can also be used in place of the if, and then in place of the and then the or. The only difference is that, all right, so so let's move on to, before we even move on to that, for you to understand, because it's similar, it's just the same thing. Let's look at using if and then and or all together. All right, so there are situations where you have the opportunity, or you need to use the if function in collaboration with the and then the or function as well. Let's see how that plays out. So if underscore end. So what is going to say is that if two, what this means is that if two conditions, now we are using the end, so please kindly pay attention. If you're using the end, it means two conditions need to be met, and we are saying that okay, so if these two conditions are met, you remember when we use the end and then the or independently, there was no any result afterwards. You only just give us true or false. But if you want a different thing other than the true or false, then we need to use the if function, so that we can say that if this condition and this condition is met, then you should give it this. Other than that, we should give it that. So that is where the if condition comes in. So the if condition gives you the opportunity to choose anything other than true or false. We are dealing with and or function. All right, and so an example is, we are going to say that if the department is procurement and the salary is greater than 20,000, then we are going to check it as doing well. Other than that, we say not really performing. All right, so that's what we are going to say. We are going to say if the department is procurement and the salary is above 20,000, we are going to say performing or doing well. Other than that, not doing well. And how do we do this with the if and then the or function? We are going to say if and. All right, so you need to work out the end function before the if function. All right, and the end function is asking for the first logical statement, and that is, so if and department So we are saying the department is equal to what? Procurement. It's equal to procurement, comma. Now the second logical function says what? And the salary is greater than 20,000. Now we can close this. And now our if function comes in. It says what? So if this is the case, then comma, then what is the result if true? We say doing well. All right. Other than that, we say not performing. Okay. And then now we can close our bracket and hit on enter. Good. And it's going to show you here that all of this, they do not meet the end conditions. However, this particular one meets the conditions, which is it's in the procurement department and is earning above 20,000. Hence, we say that he's actually doing well because we are looking at just procurement department. We can change this the department and say, okay, marketing. How many marketings do we have? Marketing. We can also change it, say marketing. And also click on enter. You are going to realize that now we're showing only this one, that marketing, and then the person is earning above 20,000. All right. So this is how the if and then this is how the if end works. One thing I should keep in mind is that using the end function only works with two logical statements. So you have logic 1 and you have logic 2. You can't add a third logical statement. You can't say, all right, so now we've said marketing, salaries, and then let's say we want to add another one. All right, and we say that, and the person is also receiving a bonus of, so let me use the marketing one of 530 so that you understand. And then bonus is equal to 530, comma. Now let's see what this does. It might work, but I'm not sure it will work. It's not going to work. Now it's not going to work because too many arguments were passed to the if function. The maximum argument count for the function is 3. Do you understand? And so this is not necessarily the if function, but this is about the end function, because the end function works with only two logics. All right, and that is when the ampersand that is when this ampersand comes in. So if you have maybe 3, 4, 5 functions that needs to be met, instead of using the end function over here, we can use what we call the ampersand. Let me show you how that works. So if, all right, so if salary is department, and we are going to say ampersand and it's 2, and then salary is greater than 2,000. Again, we are going to say this. We are going to say this. So in this situation where we are dealing with 3 different logics, when we hit on when we use the ampersand and we hit on this, what you are going to realize, what you are going to realize is that so if salary is department equal to marketing and salary is greater than 20,000 and salary bonus equal to this, doing well. So it says so that's comparison of it not support compare values of type tags with values of. Now this is saying this because the bonus column is actually showing as text, so the bonus is actually as text. So let's change it and use the total amount column. All right, and so we are going to say the total amount. All right, so let's say total amount is actually equal to, and then we say, so what we're looking for, marketing, this one is equal to 30,000. 530, 3530. That was my mom, pardon my little sister. They almost spoiled my video. Forgive me. Why is it still not working? Go to convert. Oh, so excuse me. So this is in numbers. This is also in. So let's change this. I think this is in text. So let's change this to whole numbers. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Let's change this to whole numbers. All right. So now change it to whole numbers. And so now let's see if this is going to work. Enter. All right. So now it's working. So now we are able to use the 3. So let's change it so that you know it's working. So if yes, we are going to say good. If not, we are going to say not good. All right, and click on enter so that you know it's working. All right, so you can see the changes now. So it's saying that so we were having an issue because this total amount column, which is why it's important for you to do your data cleaning properly. I didn't do my data cleaning properly, and that is what's causing this problem. And so this was in text, so you had to change it to numerical because numerical so that the equation could work. All right, and so we're saying that if the salary department is equal to marketing, so marketing this, and the salaries is greater than 20,000, yeah, this is greater than 20,000, and then the total is also equal to 350, then we say good. Do you understand? We say good. We can use three logics using the ampersand, but if you try using the and, it's not going to work because and only works with two logics. All right, so that's how it works. And likewise, we can use the vertical pipe or vertical line for the or. All right, so with the or as well, you can't use or for three logics. It's not going to work. You can only use it for two. All right, so the or is just similar to the end. All right, and so what is important is to take note of the fact that the ampersand and then the vertical pipe, they help you to be able to add 3 or 4 more logics to your logical statement that you are trying to write. Whereas the actual end and or do not allow you to add any more logics outside the two that is given. I hope this is understood. All right. So we are done with the logical statements. Wow, we are moving really fast. I do hope you are following. And so the last thing that we are going to be looking at, let's talk about text functions. Now, text functions, normally these things I prefer to do it using Power Query, and so I love to transform my data set before I send it to Power BI. I load it onto Power BI. I love to do this because the concatenate and the concat is more or less the same, and it's more or less like merging. Is just similar to merging, where you have 2 columns and you want to merge them as one. Okay, use a concatenate, and this is something that you can easily do with a Power Query in Power BI. All right, but let's try it out here and see. So we open a new column, calculated column, and let's say that we want to bring this department and this San Francisco as one. All right, we want to make them one. So let's say you have first name Meshach, second name Kwanzaa, but you want to make one and call it full name. So you want to say Meshach Kwanzaa without you having to have 2 columns for it. All right, and so you can use, if you're unable to do it in the Power Query that Power BI provides, you can do it over here with what we call the calculated columns. All right, and so let's just go ahead and say concatenate, and we are going to type concatenate. All right, so what's the first text? So let's say department. So you are trying to combine department and then geography. All right, we are going to say department and we are going to say geography. So you're saying text 1, text 2. So the text 2 is geography. All right, and then we close it and then we click on enter, and that's what we see here. But you see that it's joined everything together. There's no space. It's more or less like you are saying procurement at Francisco, which is really wrong. All right. And so again, what we can do here is we can use what we call the ampersand, and then we can just put in the space. All right, and then and okay. All right. So yeah, is this right? I think it's here. Yep. Oh, hold on, let me give me a minute. Let me figure this out. Almost forgotten. Hmm. Oh, I'm missing something. Missing something. Hmm. All right. Sorry. Sometimes you need to, it happens. It happens with even the best of us. So now we are good to go. Click on enter. All right. And now we see it's showing us with a space because we put a space here. All right. So we can just put anything there and you see it reflect. All right. So now we put a hyphen. All right. And you see it reflect. So this is how to join them together. Forgive me. Excuse me. Like I said, I normally love to do this with Power Query. So yeah, but this is how it works with a concatenate. All right. And so is the concatenate the first text and or the ampersand, and then you put whatever that you want, whether it be space, hyphen, dash, whatever, and then you put your second text. All right. So this is how the concatenate works. Now let's look at the next one, which is left, right, mid. So I'm going to talk about the left, right, the mid. I'm sure we can once you understand. So So what the right simply or the left right simply means is that it's going to take the right side, the number of decades that you give it, is going to take it starting from the right side. And so this is geography. So let's say if I need 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last four of this particular column. So the last four items. No, the last four digits, last four numbers, alphabet, whatever, what have you, will be the last four. Maybe you have a date, like this column, you need the last four. All right. So let's use the date. So you need the right side. The right is going to take from the right. All right. So we need the year. Okay. So what we can do is you can see the right. And then what is the text? The text is the date. So salaries date. So this date, all right. And we are going to say that the number of characters, we need only the last four. And then hit on enter. We are going to get just the last four of it. So we are only going to get the year 2005. So that's what we are going to get. So that's how the right works. So you can do that with any other column. So let's say you want the last four for this particular column, the if end column. So again, you can just say salaries if end. All right. And we need the last, maybe this time we need the starting from the right, we need the two starting from the right. Then we get OD throughout because that's it. And then again, say now we want it from the left side. We want to start picking from the left. We want to start picking from the left. All right. So from the left, we want the first three digits or what have you, and we can just change this and say first three and click on it, and now I'm going to get the first three. All right. Of and you can do this for almost any other thing that you want. All right. So that's how that works. And then we have what we call the upper lower trim, and I'm sure you already know this. We've talked about the upper, the lower, and then the trim already using Power Query. So what is the upper? So let's say this particular column we have Emmanuel, full name Emmanuel Azaglo, Daisy Kufikinata, Sabina Yani, Kizia Kakwa, Jafet Kwame, Shuai Dabana, we have Ali. So we want this particular column, all the items in this particular column as capital letters. We don't want them in small letters. Perhaps your manager decides to change his mind or mind and say that, you know what, this particular column is in small letters, so small cases, but we want it in capital case, in capital letters. Also, how do you go about this? And you already have the data set in Power BI. You don't need to panic. All you need to do is to come to your section and then type upper, and then go to ask you for the text, and the text is full name. So you are going to say full name and then close the bracket, hit on enter. And what's going to happen? So it's going to change every single thing into upper cases, into capital letters. All right, and you can do the same with the lower case. So let's say your manager comes again and say, you know what, I just want to disturb you a little bit, and I just asked you to do this in uppercase, but I changed my mind and I want you to do it in lowercase. You're like, oh sure, manager wants to worry me, but that is fine, I'll still get it done. So you just use the lower, hit on enter, and voila, you're going to have your section in lower cases. Assuming we already spoke about the trim, and trim helps you to clear all unnecessary lines before items in a cell or after. And so assuming there are unnecessary spaces, all right, so like so in this scenario, let me see, I don't think I have it. I don't have it. So in this scenario, one of our where we had with Oscar, we had unnecessary spaces before the name. You know, we use what we call the trim, and so you can use the trim here as well. So you just use trim, and you put in the name, so the full the text, the column. So you put in full name, and you close the bracket, hit on enter, and it's going to remove all unnecessary spaces. It's going to just remove all unnecessary spaces that you have in that particular column. All right, so that is how the trim also functions, or the trim works. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about replace. So replace is nothing more than so let's say there's a particular alphabet, particular number that you want to replace in a particular column. All right, so we say replace. So assuming we want to replace all the E's in this particular column with A. So we want to replace all the E's. So let me just trim all the E's in this particular column with A. Now what we can do is that we just type the replace, we use the replace, and we say the old text is trim. Oh, salaries trim. I can't find that. My mom can shout. Alright. So let's say the if and end. Let's use if and end, I think, because we are working on. Alright. And we say the start position is, we want to change out all the O's. So the start position should be 1. The number should be 3. And then the new text should be replace old text. Oh, sorry. So replace old text, replace O. Oh, no. So, replace in this bracket start position 1, number of characters we say 2, new text we say 4. So how does it replace? Excuse me, give me a few minutes. So the new text we are going to say, if the old text, so old text is not good. All right, I think I'm not so sure with the replace, and that is perfectly fine. It's not something I really use. Like I said, when it comes to these text functions, I normally use a lot of the Power Queries. So I'm not so sure, but I'll go do my check. Then the next video I'll probably come and then I'll show it to you. So yeah, because I really don't want to take a lot of the time. Yeah, I don't want to take a lot of time. So let's move on to the next one. Next function. Let's talk about the calculate and then the filter, and that is going to end it for today. Okay. But if I remember the place, I'll probably still come back and then get it done before we close. But I just want to finish it up without making this video too long. All right. And so, uh, with the calculate. So what does a calculate do? So calculate simply helps us to know the value of something specific, something particular. All right. So let's assume and say that, okay, so we have this data set. We want to know the salary for people in HR, people in procurement, the total salary for people in HR, people in procurement. Your manager comes and puts that across to you. Now, I want to find the salary of only people in HR, only people in procurement. Now, what we do is that we can use what we call the calculate. The calculator helps us to do that. Now, the calculator is a measure, not a calculated column. It's a measure, okay? And so we use a measure. And so we are going to say calculate. Calculate. And then what you're going to type is calculate. Well, so what is the expression? Calculate the sum salary, the total salary, right? So calculate the sum salary. And we are going to filter it by department. And what department are we looking for? What department salary are we looking for? So we can come here and say HR, admin, account, anyone, and then hit on the enter. And we are going to find that here. And so we can bring this out and use the card, and it's going to show that this is the amount that we spent on people in the HR department. We can as well just go back and say, you know what, we don't want this in HR department, we want this in account. And we can just change this to account. And it's going to show us only in account, only people in account. All right. And so we can just one more and say that, you know what, we want the total salary of people living in Accra. So geography, number of people living in only Accra. And what we can do is we can say people living only in Accra. Sure, why not? And that is going to give us the total of people living in only Accra. All right. Now there are instances where whenever you use a calculated, you are using measures over here. So for instance, you have total salary or total quantity, and you want to find, you can use something we call the filter. All right. And so yes, thank you for being here. This is going to be the end of our session for today. I appreciate it. Thank you, and I look forward to the next one.